Hey, everyone. I hope everyone is good. Hope everyone is great. Right now, I'm hearing the birds chirping outside of the window. Last night, it rained, and then into the morning, and I feel like the birds are like hallelujah right now. The sun has kind of opened up a little bit, so I see a little bit of sunshine, and they're just having a field day outside. It is a beautiful sound, but I think it's going to be quite annoying if it picks up in the audio, and I'm sorry, so I'll apologize in advance if you hear birds in the background. This weekend, I relaxed a little bit, just did some things that I needed to do and got my life together, as they say. Getting things in line. One thing I've been really working on is just simplifying my life where I don't feel overwhelmed. I've gotten to that point many times in my personal journey, and it ain't a good feeling at all. So I am prioritizing what is important, and then everything else kind of falls in place. Step 3, step 4, step 5. You know what it is. All right, so we on to a new episode. And I told you, this season we're going to dig on deep. And I want to explore some things that all of us have felt. All of us know very well. And if you are not a person considered of color, I still want you to listen in on this viewpoint, and this is how we are viewed as Black people. A few years ago, I was doing some pictures for a friend, and she's white, and she's always been a sweetheart. And one of the things that I really appreciate about her is that she is open and receptive to listening to everything. She's always been one who, even in school, just inclusive. And when people say I don't see color, they're not saying it visual fact. They're just saying color isn't a factor to how I see you, or how I show up, or how I communicate with you, or how I treat you. And she is one of those people that I know for a fact is just not one of those people. So anyway, I was doing some pictures for her youngest daughter, and we were riding to the location together where she wanted the pictures to be taken. And her daughter was in the back, free spirit. She's hanging out the window. She's playing this song, and the girl is just like in her own zone. And previous to that, about 2 weeks ago, my friend, she texted me and she said, hey, my grandparents are going to be in town and they want to do pictures at a cotton field. And she said, you're my main photographer, and I just wanted to know if that is okay. If not, I totally understand. And she said, my grandparents are 70 years old, and I don't know if they kind of understand the dynamics. And she went on this long rant through text, and I knew that she was being sincere with what she was saying, because it was almost like she was overcompensating and explaining why it is that she wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to be uncomfortable. And my reply was, I do appreciate, you for giving me the heads up. But I told her, out of honesty, I've done pictures in the cotton field with Black people who requested that they wanted to do pictures in the cotton field. And it was only based on the aesthetics that they wanted a cotton field picture. And during the time, I didn't feel any type of way. But after I got home and started editing the pictures, I was like, ooh, this may have been a moment of my ignorance and not understanding that historically this is a trigger for most people. Now, I personally wasn't in a cotton field pulling no cotton, but I know that my ancestors did. And so when we were having this conversation through text, I told her, I said, again, I've done pictures with black people in the cotton field, and it wasn't until I started editing the pictures that I realized that I didn't feel so comfortable. And I said, thank you so much for reaching out to me, but I don't feel comfortable with taking pictures in the cotton field. And she was like, oh, no problem. So that was that conversation through text. Her grandparents didn't take the pictures, but now we are 2 weeks after, and this is when we were sitting in the car. And we began to just talk. And she said, we can be open, we can be concrete. And she just started asking me questions about Black culture and just asking about things that may be offensive to Black people. And she was doing it in a way in which she only wanted to be educated, right? And one of the things that I really want to say, and I hope this is not missed by us as Black people, we know who the ignorant folks are. And we also know who aren't the ignorant folks, who really want to understand and be educated, because they don't want to fall in the category of the ignorant white folks. And many times, a lot of us will let our emotions take way, where we don't exercise listening and hearing and understanding what a white counterpart is saying or trying to understand from us. So through this conversation, she was asking me about work-related things and how a young lady came to her and said, just in conversation, but she was angry how she had more experience. Her resume was locked in. She had a lot of things that went into what she was going for, and they ended up putting her in a lesser position, and it bothered her. And she was ranting to her, and she said, I didn't personally see her resume, but whoever hired her, she was set in that position, so I didn't know. And she said, and this is her talking. She was like, girl, she said, I went to pull up her resume, and I saw all of her credentials and qualifications, and she was right. She was more equipped for the position in which she applied for instead of the one that they put her in. And so she started to ask me, have you ever experienced that? And I told her, I said, all the time. I said, it's been many jobs that I had went for, and I was initially called, for the job. I said, one thing that I recognized about, and my mother told me this a long time ago, and again, this is not to knock anyone who doesn't have what they consider a common name, but my mother told me a long time ago, she said, I wanted to make sure that whatever name we gave you and your brother, that it was a name that could open up doors, right? And I understood what my mother was saying initially, but this is where it goes awry. On paper, a common name, Lisa, looks common. But when I walk through the door and they see me as a Black woman, they decide immediately that maybe a Susie or an Elizabeth, a Sarah or an Amy is better suited for the job, even if my resume is up to par. And even if my qualifications exceed those of my white counterparts. So I explained to her, I said, this has happened to me many times. And I even know of working, I was a manager at a department store. And I was hired on. My manager was a Black woman. My qualifications were up to par as far as managerial duties. My record showed for itself. There was a conversation that had been had, and there was a manager, a white manager, who was hired after me. She was much younger than me. Her starting pay was $2 more than I. And I mind you, she was a single woman, wasn't married, no kids. I was married with kids. She comes in less qualifications and she gets $2 higher than I do. And in the scheme of things, I felt like that was a slap in the face. Not that I felt like my Black manager had to be in unison with me, but I was like, why not? Here we are. You are the overall manager of a huge department store, and you have all of the know-how to set everything straight, because she was the one who made the basis of what our wages was going to be. And she decided to let a younger, less qualified white woman make $2 more than me. And then when it came time for, us to get raises and appraisals and this, that, and the other, she significantly got higher wage increase than I did. This is just a simple fact of living that we see, we feel, and we know too well. Another thing in this conversation that we were talking about, and I think I don't recall her bringing it up, but I think I brought it up, and I said, what I really hate is the fact that white people, because it's me and her now, she open for whatever. She didn't take any offense. And I said, what really bothers me is that white people take offense to us as black women and feel that we are aggressive when we are standing our ground. And I was going through different situations where I had to just, let a sucker know I ain't the one to play with. And I'm not a very aggressive person at all, but when you challenge me, I'm not going to bow down. And so there were many situations where I did have to stand up for myself. And I was told that I was being too aggressive because most of the time what they see from us is our calm side, because we always have to play by the rules. And the rules have to be played so well that there is no room for error, and there is no room for them to say anything about us. Because y'all know, if we do a little bit of something wrong, it is like the biggest catastrophe. We called in the office and we are seen as being just being disrespectful and not following the rules and the protocols of our job. While Sally and Sarah, Jim and Dan can do whatever, and it goes unnoticed. So as I was explaining to her that black women have always, in a workplace environment and even outside of it, with white people having to watch themselves, making sure that their attitudes don't come off too much, or that if they disagree with something, that it's only, oh, I disagree, with the soft-spoken voice. While Dan, Sarah, Jimmy, Bob, and Stacy can be aggressive and affirmative, and this is how in which they get things done. There is a horrible representation of what black people are. And then we began to talk about men, and I said, let's be real. The conversations that I have with my sons will not be congruent to the conversation that you have with your son. I was so afraid when my sons began to drive because of everything that has been going on in the world and how these cops are pulling these kids over, and just for minor things. And then it creates a whole scenario of a small traffic stop into somebody's baby being dead. So I was explaining to her as well, we got to go through the whole list of stuff. I have to tell my child, make sure you got your seatbelt on. Sit straight up in the seat. Don't lean back. If you're going to play the music, play it low. Don't do it loud. I have tinted windows on my car. I said, listen, roll that window down a little bit, ride slow, be aware if the cop is behind you, don't start doing nothing funny, don't make any, sudden movements because they're watching. And I'm going through this whole thing, and she's looking at me and she was like, you're right, I don't have to tell my son these things, it's just safety first. And I said, this is the dynamic that we have in this culture, that we always have to forewarn our kids, but white kids are privileged in the way in which they are seen as the elite. Even with the way in which our kids are looked at. Now, two of my sons have locks, and I have locks as well. And I remember saying to them, make sure you keep them well cared for, manicured, put them in a ponytail, just don't have them all wild out, because the first thing they think of is they're gonna, put you with a rapper. They're gonna think you're trying to be a rapper, or they're just gonna associate the way in which you wear your hair as something bad, not even a cultural statement or a statement of just Black pride and Black love and just pride in the diversity in which we can just show up. They're going to equate you as what they see on TV. And the majority of what white people see when it comes to Black people is negative. Let's just be real. So it was even those conversations. Twist your hair up, put it in a ponytail. If you can't get a retwist, put it in a ponytail. Don't have it sticking out. While a white boy can, let's be real, he can have the disheveled look. He can walk around and he's still respected, and he still gets that job, and he's still admired by teachers, and it's a whole paradigm. More importantly, when we began to talk, because this was like a deep conversation, and I was talking about even the way in which articulate, educated Black men and women show up, and they're called whitewashed, right? They articulate their words. They're very smart. They're shunned by us, to be honest, by Black people, because Black kids, in an environment where it seems as if a lot of Black kids think it's cool to not be into the books, right? And so if they see a smart Black child who articulates their words and, makes that congruent with being white, they get picked on. But then they're isolated by the white kids because they're like an abnormality. So they don't even know how to treat them as well. And Black children cannot be smart. They just can't. I remember sharing this story to one of my friends, and she was like, whoa, I remember, I think I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade. I'm not for sure. And I had this teacher, and y'all, this teacher was the sweetest teacher ever. Always just so good with her students. And when I think about this, it was her ignorance, but deep down, again, this was like, by this time it's the 90s. So I don't think the way in which she said it, she thought about it. But we were in class, and the teacher asking questions, and so I'm answering it. It was something that we had to, something we had to remember or recall. And so I was getting all the questions right. And she was like, good job. She was always one of those teachers. Good job whenever you do something good. And so we were headed out to recess, and she came up to me and she said, Lisa, you are so smart to be a little Black girl. And y'all, like, I'm little, so I didn't think nothing of it at all. Like, I didn't. And I remember going home, and like, for me, that was like, oh, my teacher sees me. Not that I didn't think that she did, but I just was happy that she was like, you're so smart. Like, not even equating for a Black girl. So I went home and I told my mom. And I was like, Mom, my teacher said I'm so smart to be a Black girl. And I'm all giddy and happy. And she said, what? And I was like, what? Like, I totally missed it. And she was like, she said, you smart to be a Black girl. And I'm like, yeah, y'all, it went right over my head, like right over my head. And my mother said, oh no, I'm going to the school tomorrow. And I'm standing there like, what did I just do? Like, again, I'm young, I'm not equating it. And the next day my mama came to the school, y'all, and she went up to the office and she was like, I want to speak to, and I'm not going to say her name, the teacher's name, but she said, I want to talk to her. She wanted a conference right then and there. So when we went to recess, that's when we had the conference, and she pulled, my teacher pulled me in, my mom was there, the teacher was in there, and they had an administrator. And so my mom is like on edge, and she said, this is not the type of thing that you tell a student, that they are smart to be a black boy or a black girl. And my mother kept emphasizing it, and I'm sitting in the chair like, oh my God, like, this is my favorite teacher. Regardless of what color she is, she always gave to all of her students, regardless of what color it was. And my mother was just on, oh my God, on 10. And she made this lady cry, y'all. Like, the lady was in tears, and she kept apologizing, and she said, I really didn't mean it like that. I was just wanting to tell her like she's smart. And she said you couldn't just tell her that she was smart. And I remember leaving that conversation and that parent-teacher conference so mad at my mama because she showed her black ass. Like, but I get it, because then I didn't understand. And I was just so mad because I was like, now my teacher's gonna be mad at me. She doted on all of her students. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older and I revisited that conversation with my mom, and I said, Mama, you remember when you showed out? And she was like, yeah, you don't say stuff like that. And I said, Mama, I didn't understand it. You know, when you went to that woman and you was just on 10, I said, but now I understand. And it was the pure ignorance of my teacher not understanding that you cannot correlating race with intelligence. Oh my gosh. She was so wrong for that. But I also knew, regardless, you know, it's still not right. But from everything that she had showed me as a teacher, she didn't mean it, but it was her ignorance that was in front of her intelligence in the moment, where she wasn't able to read the environment and understand that was a total no-no. And I'm so thankful in that moment that I had my mother to stand up for me, because she taught me that that was not okay. Those type of conversations are not okay. You know, so many times we are put into situations, even in our own ignorance, like as a child, me not knowing and thinking that because something sounded good, it's okay. Saying to a person, you're pretty to be a black woman, or you're handsome to be a black man. Correlating, you know, what we look like to make us feel better. Like, what are the standards of black people in comparison to white people? It is the feeling that white people have this like eliteness over us, and that we are other. That is why they call us minorities, right? They are the majority and we are the minorities. Also, in just moving away from children, black children, white women, black women, onto our black men. I refuse to watch the latest video of these black cops beating this young man to death. I don't want to see any more videos of our black men being killed. It's almost like we are being desensitized from death in the most brutal way. I remember my mother she would read African American books in history, and there was a lynching, a black man hanging from the tree, and it was not blurred out. The book it was like you could see everything. And I still remember his face, and I was so scared I would not pick up that book. But it was the reality of seeing that what was going on then is still happening now. And the fact that it is on social media, on TV, desensitizes us from the brutal deaths of our men and our people. It's amazing to me that when I think about us as Black people, how we are resilient people, how we are oh so talented, intelligent, athletic. We are the ones, honestly, to be revered. And I know for people who may not be Black, who may be listening, and it's almost like they get tired of hearing it, but facts are facts, and it is true. We come in so many shapes, shades. Our genetic makeup is just off the charts. You won't find another like us. But yet, we are the most feared, we are the most emulated, and we are the most duplicated. When it comes to Black men, the fear in a Black man is so grand. I remember my husband and I going out. We went to get something to eat and leaving the restaurant. My husband is, Lord, he's so nice to everybody. And down here in the South, and I don't know, it's different places too. I know when we went to New York, people ain't nice in New York as far as the courtesy that we have down South. But, just as a general thing, when you leaving out of somewhere, when you're opening the door, you hold the door open for someone to walk in or just to let them in, just so that door is not closing in front of them, because that's like a sign of disrespect. And so we were leaving out, and this 2 white women were coming in. And so my husband let me through, and he held the door for the white women. They were older white women, and they just stood there. And so my husband was like, "Oh, I'm holding the door for you." And the white woman said, "We can hold the door." And so my husband, he looked and he let the door go. And we locked eyes, me and my husband, and shook our heads. And of course, we had a conversation in the car talking about how ignorant, these 2 white women were. But it was almost like to the white woman in front who made all the noise. It was like she was wanting to stand up to a Black man. But the second woman behind her, she acted like she was scared. And I'm thinking to myself, what is the fear in which you see in a Black man? Is it the portrayal that the media gives on television that you feel triggers a fear in you? Because really and truly, their abstinence away from us doesn't even give them detail into how we really are. It's like assuming that all Black people act the same, just like assuming that all white people act the same. So to put all of us in a category, and especially our Black men in a category, and assume that they are, absent fathers, or that they're gangsters, no home training, no morals, they're killers, murderers. It's beyond me. To be honest, I don't think that we will ever be in a world where we will be unified. We will always be seen as the other. And I want to go back to the duplication and the replication of Black people in the Black culture, in which everyone seems to love but don't want to stand beside when things go awry. And I hate to make this comparison, but let's speak facts. The Kardashian women have really maximized their monetary gain and their celebrity from the Black culture, making sure, now not all, because I know it's one that doesn't have a child with a Black man, but having their children with Black men, getting their bodies done to emulate that of a Black woman, their lips, it's right there in our faces. And to be honest, it's quite disgusting that we naturally show up as ourselves, but we are told that we are too ugly, that our lips are too big, our noses are too big, our booties and our breasts are too big. But then we have white counterparts who go out and spend all of that money to look like us, but then say to us that they don't like us. And I'll finish this up with this final thing. There's this common debate that the reintroduction of racism, the blatant racism and prejudices. But I'll say this: Trump really made it okay for people who already had resistance to Blacks, Hispanics, Asians to just be at the forefront of their ignorance and their racism. He changed the dynamic to where it became more abrupt. Now, it used to be where racism and prejudices were hidden, but it's no longer. I hate to see these Trump signs. It gives me the feeling that it spews racism, injustice, and prejudice. Anything tied to Trump to me is just, I don't know. It feels a little weird. It's almost like seeing these flags that these southern flags that they wave around. We already know what that is. We already know how that makes us feel, and they try to explain it away as, oh, we're honoring our ancestors who went to war. Okay, that's BS. And it's blatant disrespect. I want to leave you with this final thought, because this went longer than I wanted it to go, but I want to leave you with this final thought. What I've learned is that we live in this world where we have to or are told to turn it down as Black people. That we are only good enough to be athletes, which are rewarded these bonuses and this money. That we are only okay to be entertainers, singers, actors. Anything beyond that point, if you got a little bit of money or you're doing a little bit of something that's seen as illegal or it's not valid or it's not correct, we have been taken through the mud. And I say this all of the time. People really don't want us to show up the way that we can. Because I feel like we got hell in our veins and we have hell in our vessels. And the moment that we show up like they did, they want to be the victims. I'm going to continue being who I am because, walking in this earth and in this place, I refuse to let anyone, number one, demean me, disrespect me. And I don't care how they take it. But I also know that there are people from other races, nationalities, who understand how we are being treated. For a moment, when you are faced with someone just wanting to know the ins and outs of how we think and wanting to know the history, don't assume that everyone knows. Now, you can tell the ignorant ones from the non-ignorant ones, okay? We can utilize, and understand how in which they are asking or what they're wanting to know. But there are actually genuine people who want to know the Black experience and why it is that we are so resistant when it comes to certain things being said, how we're being treated. And that is your place and your time to educate them, because a lot of them don't know. And it is the ignorance of their families that didn't allow them to learn more. So when you get the opportunity to talk to someone who really wants to know our history and wants to know why it is that we feel the way that we do so strongly about so many things, or there is a time in which you want to show them how we are being treated in comparison to other people, take that moment to do so. We have much to teach other people. We have much to teach by means of our historical culture, But I'll say this as well. In order for us as Black people to be understood and want better, we have to start looking at ourselves, and we have to start doing better as well. I'm gonna leave it right there. All right, I'm glad that you joined. I'm glad that you are here. Again, if there is an episode that stuck out to you, you want to share it with a friend or a family member, please do so. Right now, we are at 7,000 downloads. So yes, we have 7,000 people who are tapping in to Season Dialogue. And y'all, I'm excited. I can't wait till we hit 10K when I get that email that says, you have 10,000 people subscribing to the podcast. I can't wait. When it gets there, I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to let you know. But we're moving. We're moving. Again, any topic ideas, anything that you suggest, y'all hit me up in the email, seasondialogue@gmail.com. You can also follow me on TikTok, Lisa Marie. You can follow me on IG personally, Lisa Marie. I got a whole bunch of dashes and stuff in my name because folks be trying to take my name, but it's also in the description. And Season Dialogue has an Instagram page as well, so I would love to see you there. I am so glad for the community. Y'all are my family. Like I said, we are here. We tapping in. Remember, Mondays and Fridays, you're going to see the notification. It's a new episode. So make sure that you tap in. I love, love, love you guys. And thank you for being my family and my community. All right, peace.